surrender is actually the most powerful move that
Yeah.
you can ever do.
Yeah.
Because surrender doesn't mean that you have to let go of your tenacity or your resilience or your strength. It just means that you are allowing yourself to receive guidance in regards to where you are focusing that energy.
And welcome back to Bloom, Build, Birth, the podcast for women over 35. As we go through some very interesting times in our lives, it's a time of discovery, rediscovery, and I'm always going to bring you guests who I think will help you figure out, what does this phase of my life, what does this part of my journey look and feel like, and how do I need to get to where I really want to be and what's authentic for me? Today, y'all, I am so excited to be joined by my girl, who quite frankly is like a girlfriend in my head. Like, we never met in person, but I feel like we're already girlfriends in my mind, and that's good enough for me. Megan Macpherson of Yes God Wellness. Girl, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, God. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so proud of you, number one. Let me just say this real quick. The fact that you do so much that I feel like immediately conveys trust and it immediately conveys authenticity. You got to tell us, like, what is at the core, what's the kernel of that? And what is Yes God Wellness? And who is Megan Macpherson?
Yes, God. Yeah. I think, okay, so first of all, Megan Macpherson is a divine vessel for God, just like everybody else on this earth. And Megan has discovered through life's trials and tribulations that I can be liberated by identifying with the God in me versus the experiences I've been through, because I have a trauma story just like everyone else does. And I think probably what makes me seem very trustworthy and be very trustworthy is that I'm very transparent about my life. I mean, I don't tell all my business, but I do leverage the things that I have experienced in my content.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about real life things, and I don't sugarcoat, and I don't preach at people either. I feel like I make it an us thing. Like, we're all in this together. We can be better together. And so, yes, God.
Was there anything in your life? I know you mentioned we all have a trauma story, right? We all have something that has shaped us. Was there a crystallizing moment, though? I'd like to. Yeah. I feel like I have this theory in my head. I'm still working through like how I bring it into my wheelhouse. But like, I feel like every 7 to 10 years, there's like a new you. We know this, right? Our cells regenerate and we literally are a new creation. Yes. Was there anything though that was like a quantum leap for you, or anything that you can share with us?
I feel like there have been several. Initially in my adolescence, I did become a teen mom. I had my first 2 children when my son was born when I was 17. My daughter was born when I was 19. And I was still a kid, I was very young and I didn't know what I was doing. And I made a lot of mistakes. And I also used the fact that I was a teen mom to really kind of be diligent about getting my education and, securing good employment and the kind of track that it was back then when it was still an analog world.
Right.
So that, I think, was a crystallizing moment for me in retrospect, because it gave me something else to live for, something else to be successful for.
Yes.
And then the next moment I would say was probably my next set of children that I had in my early 30s. And I had a very traumatic birthing experience with my second son. And I was 7 centimeters dilated. And because I had Medicaid at the time, they did not want to admit me to the hospital. They actually handed me discharge papers with a prescription for Ambien.
Oh my God.
At 7 centimeters dilated. Yes.
That is insane.
It's insane.
Like, you're doing birth while you're asleep? Like, what were they thinking?
Exactly. Like, oh, just go to sleep and like, we'll deal with you later. And so that, honestly, that trauma was the thing that I think planted the seed in me
Yeah.
of just never wanting to be at the mercy of systems
Mhm.
or anyone, period. Now, I
Mhm.
was grateful that I had my mom with me, and I'm also a very strong advocate for myself. So I refused the discharge and actually wound up giving birth to my son right there in triage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was crazy because thank God he was healthy and everything was fine. But had it not, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? It was a
Right.
dangerous situation. And honestly, like in retrospect, that is what Jump Forward caused me to kind of like completely renounce Western everything. Like I was kind of against Western medicine, against Western approaches to thing. I really started digging into Eastern practices, Eastern way of doing things. And I found something called yoni steaming. And so that was the catalyst, right? And this is something that I always talk about is that our trauma is typically tied to our purpose.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like that at the time,
Mhm.
but it's really, I've never seen it not be true, you know? And so fast forward to a few years later, I had then, since then, had my second daughter,
Mhm.
and I had her in the water. I did everything completely different. So I had a water birth. I was yoni steaming after she was born. I was all into like, the Eastern kind of approach. And I had been laid off from a job that I had gotten, and someone was I was in a room with some girlfriends and somebody said, "Oh, I've always wanted to try yoni steaming. Like, do you know anywhere I could go and do that?" And my
Mhm.
girlfriend was like, "Oh, Megan does that all the time."
Mhm.
And so that was really the inception of my business because, she wanted me to give her a yoni steam. She wanted to come over. She asked me how much I would charge for it.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of grew from there. That's when I first started my Instagram page for my business, which was named something different at the time.
Mhm.
It was actually, I called it the Honey Pot Durham until I received a cease and desist letter from the Honey Pot.
Oh,
And,
that's
even that was God.
lore. That's some
Yes,
interesting lore, girl. Oh my
yes,
gosh.
girl. And she was very cordial about it. She sent me a note with some free products and everything. And girl, she was like, "Girl, that's my name.
She's like, FYI, I love you, but
We're not doing that. We're not
okay.
going to play this game."
She backed you right up, huh?
Okay. And so, but it was so beautiful because I had already been like very active on social media. And one of my favorite sayings was always, "Yes, God." Like I would say it all the time.
Yes.
And so when that cease and desist came through, within a couple of days, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to change my business to Yes, God Wellness.
Yes.
And so even then, right, again, something that seems like, oh, it's a bad thing that's happening, it's horrible. Like
Right.
a lot of times God uses those things to redirect us,
Yes.
and I knew then, I didn't know quite to the extent, and I'm not sure if I still even know quite to the extent what God is doing in my business and in my life. But I just remember saying, God, I see how you came and like just bombarded, like you just took over my business. Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so my business name changed, and I moved from just offering the service in my home doing yoni steams to actually creating a product line.
Mhm.
I have helped hundreds of women heal their wombs,
Yeah.
release trauma, release fibroids, heal postpartum, increase fertility if that's something they're interested in,
Mhm.
helps with mental clarity. I have a highlight on my Instagram page called Receipts, and there's tons of different testimonials and feedback from different women. So
Yeah.
it was like, seeing the progression of, you know what I mean, something so traumatic to happen to kind of like push me in this direction so that, okay, now, oh, now I'm known for this thing. Oh, now I'm going to have a business for it. Oh, now, because I didn't even know that yoni steaming could help with fibroids and all these things. Like I was just doing it to try and heal after having a baby because I
Right.
was trying to hurry up and move past the process. And
Mhm.
when I found yoni steaming, I didn't realize how much of an emotional and energetic practice it was. I thought it was just a physical thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was when I really started connecting to the God within me, when I sat still and actually honored myself in that way, even though that wasn't necessarily my intention of doing it. So yeah, so that was another crystallizing moment. And then I would say this last kind of crystallizing moment, this evolution of my business, came from me just really kind of experiencing. I got married and divorced. I also kind of had this long-standing connection with someone who I was close with since, middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And we revisited each other last summer. And, it was just like, I had to understand that it's okay to let go of connections and people when you outgrow them,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of us confuse loyalty
Mm-hmm.
with loyalty to ourselves. And we have to be loyal to what feels good in our nervous system. And I feel like so many of us have not really processed our trauma yet.
Yeah.
That trauma feels good to our nervous system.
Correct.
And that's why it's so important, I think, to give ourselves permission to heal and unsuppress things, right? Because as women, especially as Black women, we push things down, we stuff it down, we try to hurry up and move. Oh, that was a long time ago. Oh, that was this and that.
Yeah.
And, we may have people in our lives who have known many iterations of us. And so we cling on to those people because they have known us for many iterations. And I think one of the big things that I've come to understand just recently within this last year or two is that, again, like, God is within me and I don't need to look to anything external to validate me. I don't need to look to any relationship, any material thing, anything to tell me that I am whole, perfect, worthy, and enough. And I feel like, I didn't understand that. Definitely the society wants to program us and brainwash us as women to think that we,
even as it speaks to health and wellness, it's the same thing. Like when you
yes,
think about the medical approach that we take typically in Western cultures and civilization, and the spiritual approach, everything is outside of you.
yes,
Everything is outside of you. There's no autonomy. There's no connection. There's no embodiment.
exactly.
And so for that reason, everything feels disconnected because it is.
Exactly.
It's literally removed from your power,
Mhm.
and you're told that you need to talk to this person about it.
Mhm.
You need to get this diagnosis before you
Yes.
get this permission to get the
Yes.
care that you know that you need.
Mhm.
And so when you were talking about your journey and sort of the progression that you made, even from like, I do everything in the 3 phases. You're blooming, you're building, and you're birthing. And when I heard you say, Megan, which is so powerful, I had goosebumps the whole time you're talking, girl.
Yes, God.
Because you did so much of that at the same time, long before you knew how, right? You had to do the blooming and the building and the birthing before 19, 17. You were doing those things. And so that's a time when I often think you really should be solely focused, if you can, if you have that blessing, on the blooming, right?
Yes.
As someone who has had to and is still juggling all 3 of those, and there's no, I want you and I want all of our listeners to understand there's no hierarchy to those things.
No.
Like, I think people think if you are in the queen phase and you're birthing that you're done. You have moved into this new phase and now you can tell everybody else what the hell to do. That's not how it works as a queen. As a queen, you are listening to everybody else and you are part of that cycle, but you are not in charge per se. You are in charge of your work, but you're not in charge. And I'd love to know from you, how have you been juggling and like balancing those 3 phases in this season of your life, right? In this season where hormones are shifting, life is shifting, you have a business, you have children, like what's working for you right now in terms of tools even?
Yeah, what's working for me is surrendering to God, honestly. I think especially as women, we are leaned on and depended on a lot to kind of do a lot of the labor, right? The physical labor, the emotional labor, the mental labor, the spiritual labor.
Yeah.
And so we're used to kind of leading that charge. And That's not a bad thing, right? We have been cultivated and qualified, right, to be leaders.
Mm-hmm.
However, I just talked about this in another live I did recently, is that in order to be a wonderful leader, you have to be a great follower too.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to say, not my will, but yours, God.
Yes.
I think that is just the major shift that has happened to me through all of the different catalysts.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, I had to get to a point where I was in so much pain
Mm.
that I said anything but this. And I think the anything but this point is so beautiful. And that's why the breakdowns that we have and the points in our life where we feel like we just can't bear anymore
Yeah.
are so beautiful, because we're actually, so there's no other option but to surrender.
That's right.
And so I guess my work now is focused around, let's just intentionally surrender. Let's just set it down.
Right.
Let's just not even wait until we're crashing up against all of these circumstances and trying to make all these things happen and trying to fit into all these boxes that we've been told that we're supposed to be fitting into.
Yeah. It makes me think about something else. I thought about this, but back in 2020, I realized like life was so crazy, that year. And then 2021, I'm like, if I make it out of this pandemic, because who knew, right? Back then, whether or not we were going to make it out of that pandemic. I said, if I make it out of this pandemic, I'm not going to continue to flex resilience. I was like, resilience is my superpower. I was that girl, right? Like I'm always going to bounce back, and I am. Let's be clear. But I don't want that to be my sort of like my personality. Yes. I want to get ahead of it and make better decisions and make better choices and make a better path for myself, so I'm not in recovery all the time.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And I feel like surrender is a word that I'm loving that you said that. It keeps coming up in conversations I'm having with women,
It's so necessary, because we've been brainwashed to believe that surrender is weak. And surrender is actually the most powerful move that you can ever do.
Yeah.
Because surrender doesn't mean that you have to let go of your tenacity or your resilience or your strength. It just means that you are allowing yourself to receive guidance in regards to where you are focusing that energy. And first and foremost, what I found is the energy always needs to go inward towards ourselves instead of outwards towards everybody else. Because if we don't have, I always say, we need to be giving from the saucer, which means that the cup is overflowing. That's right. So we never need to be offering anybody our cup to drink from.
Right.
We need to be offering our saucer to drink from, which means that your cup is overflowing. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Overflow. I love that. And you know what you said about the surrender being sort of the pinnacle of strength, really, and like your kind of your placement. The queen is in surrender mode. She can't fly. Food has to be brought to her. Like she's very vulnerable. And so it's up to her to maintain a healthy hive.
Yes.
So that the rest of the folks in the hive can keep it operating, keep it running smoothly. And that position of surrender is one that I don't think should be looked at. And I think you're so right. We look at it as like a punishment almost. When really that is the position where you can receive the most downloads, I have found, where you receive the best ideas and the best clarity. I would love to know what, in terms of discussing like womb wellness and clarity, tell us more about how those things are connected.
Yeah, absolutely. So Louise Hayes has a book about the correlation between the emotions and then different things that we may have going on in the body, different disease or different misalignments. And the womb is referred to as the emotional junk drawer. So not only do women experience physical harm, unfortunately, in the womb space, but also any type of emotional kind of traumatic things that we experience or have experienced, they tend to get stuffed down into the womb space because it's a hollow space in our body.
Yeah.
And, all of these things are happening on an energetic level. And so womb work and really honoring our wombs and acknowledging our wombs and the things that our wombs have experienced and paying homage to our wombs, right? Whether we have children or not, we are able to give birth,
Mm-hmm.
period. We're able to give birth not just to human beings, but to ideas, to families, to businesses. I mean, even if you think about humanity, right? Humanity follows the matriarchal line.
That's right.
I know men want to jump in there and try to claim their piece of it, but the reality is it follows the womb,
Yeah.
right? Because we can use any. It doesn't matter who, you know what I'm saying?
It's natural. Listen, natural.
It can be, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, and if you think about the egg and the sperm, even, right? The egg is sitting there waiting to choose the best, you know what I'm saying?
Right. And that's why it's
Co-creator.
so important, I think, for us to pay more attention to nature.
Yes.
Because I saw a video earlier and it was talking about, it was like, people tell you to be more feminine. And then you look at how organisms in the world
Yeah.
we run stuff. We are the ones doing the hunting. We are the ones
Yes.
doing, like
Yes.
this is not some sort of situation where we're supposed to just sit here and look cute.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. The
Yeah.
feminine is the dominant, right? Because the feminine is what creates. And so as far as like the womb and clarity, I think that it's so important to give honor and reverence to our wombs, whether that's through yoni steaming, whether that's through meditation, whether that's through journaling. I mean, there's many different ways that you can give reverence to yourself, but
Mhm.
it's the awareness that, you know what? I don't need for anybody else to tell me that I am the prize. That is something that must be known. That is something that must be uncovered and cultivated, especially in this society that tries to tell us, that we are expendable and that we are, they just need us for children. It's like
Mhm.
every single thing that a man does ultimately leads back to being leveraged for a woman.
Right. Right.
And so the reality is that regardless of what people are saying, like you said, I think it's important for us to pay attention to nature,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to our inner GPS as women, because we get an initial gut feeling about something and then the mind initially comes right in to try and like ration and logic and everything, but we have the right answer inside. We just tend to allow fear and insecurity and past experience to kind of talk us out of what we have a deep knowing about.
Yes.
And so it's important for us to lean into that knowing, regardless of the fear and all the other things that the monkey mind tries to come and distract away from that knowing.
I think it's also important for conversations like this, right? I want us to get back to having circles where
Yes.
women are sharing this kind of thing. That's the whole point of this podcast, right? Because it's like we got a million podcasts. Why another one? Well, I think it's important to have the conversation around what is working and what is not. What would you say is working really well for women?
I think what's working really well for women is prioritizing their own happiness and peace, even if that is conflicting with what society is telling them that should be bringing them happiness and peace. I think women being honest with themselves. I think women leaning into what feels good in their nervous system is working. And I think that women coming into community with one another and not competing with one another and not putting one another down is working. And I think that is the way that it is designed to be. I think that we are supposed to be in community. And I think that we are, we have so much power and we don't realize it. We don't realize
Especially
it.
across generations. I think I know for a fact there are people who try to create division between us, their ages. Oh, young girls, they're jealous of y'all, or old ladies, there's like all of this division. we have a lot to learn from each other.
Mhm.
We have a lot
Yes.
to teach each other. And so I had someone on the podcast last week who's my youngest guest. And I'm like, if the women in my life, or even who follow me on social media, if y'all are making the same mistakes that I made
Mhm.
in my 20s and 30s,
Mhm.
I'm doing something wrong,
Right.
right? It's for me. It's the onus is on me to share my experiences so that you can miss those landmines. They're sitting right there.
Yes, exactly.
What do you feel like is important for you to learn while sitting at the feet of elders? And what do you want to teach to young women coming behind you?
I think it's just important to listen to elders' experience with life because, sitting where they are, I think retro hindsight is always 2020. And I think that it is important to honor people's lived experience, especially if it's something that is consistent,
Yeah.
across the lived experience, specifically of women.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I really want to get across to younger women is to be more selfish, really be a lot more selfish. Do not center your life around a relationship. A relationship should be coming to decrease the weight that you're carrying, not increase it.
Yes. Yes.
And I think, again, society has kind of programmed us to believe in this picture of what, living happily ever after looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be more honest with ourselves about folks' capacities, folks' natures.
You're being incredibly
I'm being very politically
diplomatic
correct
today.
right
You're being
now.
very diplomatic today. You don't have to be, by the way, but you're being very diplomatic today. That's fine. That's fine.
I mean, I want to be diplomatic because I want to not create a defense in anyone. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I think that it's important, especially when you're talking about younger generations, right? Because, you know, we've been sold this bill of goods, right? We've been sold this bill of goods, and I think it's easy for us to see it for what it is, but I don't think it's always so easy for younger folks to see it for what it is.
Right.
And I think that, I want to also convey that anything is possible at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm very mindful of my words and
Yes.
very mindful because I understand that words have creative power.
Mm-hmm.
And but I feel like the cheat code to all of it is to prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
Know yourself, love yourself, validate yourself, appreciate yourself, honor yourself. And then that way you will be coming to life and relationships from a identity of wholeness.
Yeah.
And because when you come from an identity of wholeness, you can spot the cracks immediately. You immediately feel them, and it's not like, oh, because when we come to life and relationships looking to be fulfilled,
Right.
we're so much more susceptible. We're so much more vulnerable to be experiencing bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
And the reality is, the old saying of like, you don't get what you want, you get what
Mhm.
you are, right?
Exactly.
And that's the same thing for everything. Like you're not going to, that's why in relationships, like when there's a relationship that ruptures for whatever reason, I think it's important that we look at everything.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
don't look at the other person and say, okay, you did this wrong,
Hmm.
wrong, wrong.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
checklist starts right here.
Hmm.
What did I
Yes.
do? What did I do as a woman who is maybe in a new era of sovereignty? Maybe she's looking at being an empty nester for the first time in a little bit. Maybe she's going through a divorce or a marriage or a career shift.
Hmm.
What would you say are some signs and symptoms that she might need to do some womb work? Are there, like, I think, and this is why I'm asking, I think a lot of women are disconnected from their bodies, as we talked
Hmm.
about earlier, and may not even know,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
They're out of order
Mhm.
internally. What
Yeah.
are some signs and symptoms, Megan, of my womb not being where it should be in terms of my health, but also for women who've had a hysterectomy.
Hmm.
What does
Hmm.
that look like?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'll just make the statement and position that I think every woman should do womb work, like regardless. I think that it's something that every woman should have as a part of their life, just like they brush their teeth every day. I think it should be a non-negotiable. Some things that are symptoms of definitely really needing it ASAP: shame, guilt, and fear, which
Mm,
are pretty much consistent across the board, which is why I say I think every woman needs it. If
yeah.
you feel like you're not worthy, if you feel like you're not enough, if you feel like you're too anything, whether it's too old, too, big, too small, too whatever,
Hmm.
I think that the womb is the place to start, because that is where those things have taken root, those notions of not enoughness. They're usually stemmed and back to trauma.
Hmm.
That's typically the root cause. And so knowing that the womb is the emotional junk drawer, we want to first clear the drawer out. We want to bring things up to the surface so that we can deal with them and so that we can process them.
Hmm.
You asked me something else. I forgot what the last part of that
What if
question.
for the woman who doesn't have a womb, who's listening right now,
Woman,
and
yes,
maybe she's like, I don't have it, I don't have one anymore, or I
mhm,
wasn't born with one, whatever the
yes,
case may be. What
yes.
what kind of is her work? What does that look like?
Yeah. So her work is exactly the same. Honestly, the organ, so everyone has two bodies, right? We have a physical body and then we have an energetic body.
Yes.
And so every woman has an energetic womb, because I've worked with a lot of women who have had hysterectomies and other things. And honestly, it's needed regardless of if you still have the organ inside of your body or not,
Yeah.
because that space is still there,
Yeah.
and so I think it's important to, right, because the womb is one of the main organs that the womb space rather is one of the main spaces that signals our femininity. That is where our femininity stems from.
I think that's important to talk about because at this age, right, the majority of my listeners and my viewers are
Hmm.
35 and up. And
Hmm.
especially with Black women, I don't know, it feels like an
Hmm.
assault on our wombs.
It
I know
is.
so many
There
women who, as soon as they have one fibroid or one cyst, next thing you
they want
know,
to take. Hmm.
and
They
I'm
want to
like,
take that.
why? Why is it such a push for hysterectomy? I'm not saying that this is medical advice or that we're trying to tell people what to do with their health, but would you say that there is an issue there that we should be concerned about when it comes to womb wellness?
There is absolutely a war on Black women's wombs,
Mm-hmm.
specifically Black women, women in general, but specifically Black women. I have unfortunately been aware of so many. I mean, they're prescribing hysterectomies like they prescribe, Tylenol.
Yeah.
Like they want to take that organ away from us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have my own theories about what they are doing with the wombs,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's good. I think that our wombs are very valuable, even financially speaking. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that they stand to gain financially from taking our wombs. And I think also, especially in this Western society, they profit off of us being unwell.
Yeah.
And, if they're trying to take your womb out, remember, if you do still have a womb, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's your hormones are heavily dependent on your womb space. There's a lot of biological functions that communicate with your womb.
Yes.
And so, I feel like removing that from the equation then can make you somewhat more dependent on them to balance, what has been taken
Mm-hmm.
away. I
Yeah.
also believe that God has given us everything we need to manage our health. And I'm not saying I'm completely against Western medicine, but I think that every issue that we experience, including health issues, start with our identity. We
Mm-hmm.
have to first start perceiving ourselves as healthy, perceiving ourselves as worthy to be healthy, perceiving ourselves as deserving of health. Because we receive messaging that we're not, especially after a certain age. We are expendable, and no one cares anymore, and whatever. And so I think that it's really, really important to understand how powerful the mind is,
Yes.
and how much you perceive yourself actually influences the way that other people perceive you.
I love
It's
that.
for sure.
One of the most powerful things that I've learned over the last few years, speaking of like how you think of yourself and how you speak of yourself
Mhm.
and shame and all of that, and kind of knowing your role. I feel like a lot of women either covet a role that's not theirs for whatever reason, or they don't know how to play their own position.
Mm.
And I think learning about the grandmother theory, where you have these mammals, you have whales, elephants, dolphins, like certain animals that the females of that species are around far after they are reproducing, right? And the
Mhm.
theory being, for those who aren't aware of this, is that this is happening to pass on wisdom, to pass on information, to pass on where the best feeding areas are, to pass
Mhm.
on what to do when danger comes, to
Mhm.
pass on the knowledge. And that is why, as humans, we are one of the few species that gets to be grandmothers, right?
Mhm.
What would
Mhm.
you say a grandmother, right, is contributing to the collective in terms of womanhood? What, in terms of like, what are you looking forward to, right? In terms of like, what does it mean to have that kind of grandmother energy? And what do you think that they can be pouring back into the collective?
Yes. Well, I actually am a grandmother.
Girl,
Um,
where?
I had them young, so I had them young. They had them a little young, so I am a
Yeah.
grandmother. But yeah, just what you said. The wisdom, the experience, the
Yeah.
perspective. The bird's eye view, the
Yes.
pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing them to not experience the same things, or giving them the option rather not to
Yeah.
experience the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I think it's so important because we are able to, there's nothing like grandma energy.
Yes. Yes.
It's different. It's
Mm-hmm.
different, and it is just, to me, it's just pure love, right? Because there's not always, I mean, sometimes there is responsibility tied to it, but it's kind of like a love with no strings attached, right? Because
Right.
you get to, I mean, you want to see them do well, and you also get to see, this human being was inside of my body at one point,
Right.
right? This
Right.
grandchild was
It's so
inside of my body,
yes.
right? As if it, excuse me, if it was from my daughter, because
Right.
as baby girls, we have all of our eggs inside of us in utero.
That's right.
It's a special connection, and I think that it's a portal. It's a portal for like you said, wisdom. It's a portal for a lot of joy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a portal of protection also. I know people talk all the time about grandma's prayers, still covering them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it's amazing. And I'm honored that I get to experience it. I'm honored that we as a species, like you said, get to experience it,
Mm-hmm.
and that we get to, have that guidance. Our children and our grandchildren get to receive that guidance from us.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a perfect segue, girl. Perfect. Because,
Yeah.
I can't let you get out of here without talking about prayer.
Okay.
Because for those of you who are uninitiated, that's how I felt in love with this woman. Because I'm like, who is this type of praying like this? I'm like, wait a minute. I am the granddaughter of a powerful prayer.
Mm.
And this woman, honey, she could pray the house down. I'm talking about like you're covered. I'm still covered. My child is covered. Her, if she has children, they're covered.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like what have you always been a powerful prayer? Have you always had that sort of divine tug on your heart, or was that new? And then you gotta talk about how you pray, as I feel like it's very different than what most of us
Mhm.
grew up hearing. But
Mhm.
has that always been a part of your spiritual journey?
Yeah, so I will say I have not always prayed this way. My prayer that you hear now is a mixture of a lot of different influences. I will say shout out to Pastor McGill back in the 2000s, who was the pastor at a church I attended, New Life Ministries up in Rochester, New York. He pulled me aside after service one day, and I think I was like 24, 25. And he pulled me to the side and he said, "You have a lot to say, and God is going to use you to say a lot."
Mm.
And I remember just being like, oh, okay, and because the circumstances of my life at that time were not really reflecting that.
Mm.
And so upon that kind of like prophecy, I actually attended divinity school. I went to divinity school. A couple years later, I started pursuing my master's in divinity.
Mm.
And I was very disappointed by what I learned. And I think, a lot of people have experienced a lot of church and religion hurt, right? I get a lot of people who are drawn to my work have had that experience with church.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was just I think that experience in divinity school was a catalyst for me to go on this spiritual journey, because I'm also a Sagittarius. And so I'm very much about the truth and seeking the truth and wanting to know and the principle of things and like really needing to,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so I've studied energy, I've studied quantum physics, I've studied, the laws, universal laws, law of assumption, law of attraction, law of compensation. And so I believe that my prayers are a culmination of all of those things, which full circle moment in retrospect led me back to scripture, which I would have never imagined, right?
Mm.
Because if you look at scripture from the proper context and from the proper perspective, it actually tells you to pray the way that I pray now, which is to pray with thanksgiving,
Yes.
pray that that you have already received it.
Yes.
And so the instruction was there, but the context wasn't there yet. And
Mhm.
so the way that I pray is from the perspective that creation is finished, which means there is no desire or goal or anything that I have that is not already done.
Mhm.
And so from the perspective that it's already done, I'm not asking, I'm thanking.
Yes.
And that's the distinction. I'm not asking for something. I am thanking for it already being on its way to me.
Yes, God. I mean,
Yes,
it's
God.
so powerful because I think that it's such a seemingly subtle shift in terms
Mhm,
of word choice, but
mhm,
so powerful in terms of the energetic nature of your prayer.
mhm. Yes.
It is not a pleading. It is not a begging for
Mhm,
like recognition. And I think what really resonates with for me and for other people, I'm sure, is this sort of audaciousness of it, the audacity to know that God is right here. Like,
mhm,
so this connection, this conversation
mhm.
has nothing to do with like this sort of, big person sitting in the sky.
Yeah.
This is me. And I feel like when you, and I've started doing this, I'll tell you a little secret. I've never shared this before. So I grew up in the church, right? I went to church with my grandmother's often. I'm talking about
Mhm,
like apostolic, like
mhm,
playing
mhm,
in the spirit,
mhm.
shouting church. Okay.
Yes. Mhm,
To this day, I still like that. I love a praise break, honey. I love like a good church. I love a good the organ gonna get going. I'm gonna get going.
mhm,
However, I've also deconstructed. I've also
mhm.
moved away from feeling like I need to have someone intercede for me, right? When
Mhm.
it comes to my
Yes.
relationship with God. And so I am this mix of all of this. And so when I listen to gospel music,
Mhm.
I'm talking to me.
Yes. As you should be.
I'm
As you
talking
should
to
be.
me. Like
Mhm,
it's kind of like a little
mhm,
bit of Snoop, right? I want to thank me, right?
mhm.
Like it's
Yes.
really like pulling in the energy
Yes.
back. And I feel like that is such a it fills me up in a different way than it ever did
Mhm.
years ago. And
Yes.
I want to know from you, like, what made you that bold? What made you? Was
Yeah.
there a moment where you're like, oh, this is a game changer?
Yeah. It's definitely a paradigm shift, right? And I think that's, my big focus is shifting from external to internal,
Yeah,
right? Because capitalism, patriarchy teaches us that everything we want is separate from us.
right.
right? And it taught us that through religion, right?
Mhm.
Through God, through Jesus, that, Jesus is our intercessor between us and this big God
Yeah.
that is judging us and punishing us and, reprimanding us for
Yeah.
disobedience, which is actually the patriarchy's agenda.
That's
And
right.
they try to project it through God, right? And
Mhm.
so I think deconstructing patriarchy was huge for me
Yeah.
in understanding that. And I also think that, from an energetic perspective, right? Because my Sag brain is like, okay, what is true no matter what? What's true no matter what are laws, right? Energetic laws. If I take something and drop it, the law of gravity is going to pull it down, right? So I'm
Mhm.
not interested in philosophies or theories. I'm interested in what is true no matter what.
Mhm.
And everything to me fits into that, because even like you said, it feeling good to be having praise dances and being the reason why church feels so good in those moments is because your emotional state is high,
That's right.
right? Your energetic state is very high and you are experiencing a lot of joy and a lot of bliss because music has the power to do that,
Right.
right? And so, again, it's all about your emotional state. And
Mhm.
so the emotional state that happens when you begin to separate God from yourself, it feels like this sinking, right? This kind of
Mhm.
crunching down of, oh my God, I'm not good enough. But when you start to use your critical thinking and say, wait a minute, there's something inside of me that's keeping my heart beating.
Yeah.
There's something inside of me that's keeping my blood flowing.
Mhm.
There's something inside, there is some force within me that is keeping me alive. And so you start to actually understand, like, oh, wait a minute. You start to kind of, I think, play around with the idea, like, well, I think God is probably in me then. But, right. But Christianity and a lot of religions would say that's blasphemous
Right.
because it goes against their agenda. It goes against their oppression that they are trying to utilize religion for.
Yeah.
And, I think initially it started with me like putting love songs on myself. So, like, you do it with gospel, I do it with love songs. Like, you're
Yeah.
singing love songs to another person. No, I'm singing the love songs to myself.
I love
Like,
that.
Willie Hutch, I Choose You is totally my own song to me. Like, I choose you, Willie. Like,
I
you
love
are the
that.
one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And and paying attention to what is my emotional state when I do certain things, right? And so I noticed that the more that I put things as with me as the focus versus the external as the focus, the better that I feel.
Mhm.
And I guess what I've learned over time is that God is enthusiasm. God is excitement. God is joy.
Mhm.
God is all good. And
Mhm.
so anything that makes us feel good, we need to lean into that.
Yes.
Even though society wants to shame us away from it because it goes against what their agenda is for us,
Mhm.
it's imperative that we lean into the things that excite us and bring us a lot of enthusiasm and joy, because your purpose is only going to be tied to things that you're passionate about.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I think, like I said, it clicked for me when the external things that I thought were sustaining me collapsed.
Yes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is metacognition. We talk
Mhm,
about that in the bloom phase when you are thinking about thinking. And it's so important. I mean, here you are, you went to divinity school, you've done the
mhm,
things, you've done all
mhm,
of the, you've been to
mhm,
church, 8 days a
mhm,
week, you've done the
mhm,
things. And then you still have to step back and say, why do I think this? Why
mhm.
do I believe this? And does this make sense? Is this a thought that and people say, well, you can't think with a finite mind. I know God is
Mhm,
infinite. We are finite. But even in that, Megan,
mhm, mhm,
I feel like there is some rootedness. This is at least for me.
mhm.
I find so much peace in, in knowing that I have a finite mind in this plane, right?
Yeah,
To understand an infinite wisdom. And
mhm.
that to me is comforting. Like I don't need to figure it all out. I
Exactly.
don't have to know
Yes,
everything. I don't have
yes,
to know all of the details.
yeah,
I simply have to move in the direction
yep.
that is my
That's
purpose
it.
and is my
Yeah,
divine,
that's it.
will for my
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And
There's not
that's that divine surrender. Yeah, that's that divine surrender of, coming from this identity of the strong Black woman to, you know, allowing ourselves to be taken care of, and
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to be led, and allowing ourselves to be guided and supported and provided for and resourced,
Yes.
because God is the ultimate source of our supply,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what channels God uses, right? God could use this job, that person, this relationship, that social security check. Like, it
Right.
doesn't matter. And the thing is, when you start detaching from this channel
Yeah.
and just focus on the source itself, which is God, everything becomes so much easier, because it's not devastating if a channel happens to transition and shift into something new.
Yes, God. Yes. I love that so much.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
let's do 3 hot take questions, and then we'll
Okay.
talk about how people can reach you and work with
Okay.
you and
Yes, God.
go on steam with you and everything else.
Yes.
All right. Do you think that women who are in their healing zone, right, their healing mode,
Mhm.
how does a woman who is healing avoid sinking into kind of like, well, avoidance? How do you maintain your healing, which is really like an inside job, right? But also maintain your connection to community.
I think that you maintain your connection to community by paying attention to how your nervous system feels in the different spaces that you're in. How
Yeah.
does doom scrolling feel in your nervous system? How do the TV shows that you're watching feel in your nervous system? How does the music that you're listening to feel? How do the conversations that you're having feel? I
Yeah.
think it's really important for women to be in community and be consuming content that truly allows them to feel seen, and kind of without going completely into the trauma story and validating and like keeping the victimhood going, because
Yeah.
I think there is such thing as divine victimhood, though. At the time also, I think we need to hear certain things and be validated in our experience, but I think it needs to have an expiration mark. And
Yes.
we need to say, okay, yes, other people have experienced this. Yes, I'm not the only one. Yes, this is a real thing. Yes, this is a
Mhm.
pattern. And
Mhm.
I am choosing to create something different for myself now.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
I love that. Okay. How can we maintain our connection to source, our connection to God,
Mhm.
without it turning into a crutch? I feel like there could be
Mhm.
some situations where maybe that can become a bit of a crutch. Have you ever experienced that or seen that? And how can we not do that, essentially?
Well, I think the only way it can become a crutch is if it's performative in the first place.
Mm.
So we have to make sure that it's an authentic connection to God and not just performative. And we're not just calling on God when we need help, but
Yes.
actually acknowledging and honoring God in all things, and understanding that everything is to be of service to us,
Yeah.
the good things and the bad things. And also the power of neutrality. And this is why the self concept is so important, to begin seeing yourself as whole, worthy, perfect, and enough.
Yeah.
Because when you are coming from that perspective of already having God within you, already being one with all that is, you become a lot less movable by
Mhm.
circumstances and storms of life when they come.
Girl, that's a whole sermon right there.
Yes, God.
And then my last question for you, if I'm listening to this, I've never heard your content before. I've never
Mhm.
met you before. I don't know your work. What would you tell me is the difference maker in your experience that maybe I should implement in my experience? Like, what's something that has changed you that you would recommend someone else trying?
I would recommend a couple things. I would recommend not jumping on your phone first thing in the morning.
Mm.
And as soon as you wake up, just allowing yourself to lay there before your mind starts going, just start saying thank you. Like,
Yes.
go on a rampage of thank you. Thank you for this bed. Thank you for these sheets.
Mhm.
Thank you for this ceiling. Thank you for this home. Thank you for my legs. Thank you for the bathroom. Just like immediately fix your mind on all of the things that you have
Mhm.
versus all of the things that you don't have. I think that's a game changer. And then the next thing I would say would be to ask God to show you how good it can get, and to ask God to show you how you can be transformed and how you can be a vessel. And then be open to hearing from God, which means that again you have to be mindful of your inputs. What are
Mhm.
you listening to? What are you watching? What are you having conversations about? And really be mindful that whatever you're giving your attention to, you are actually co-creating it in your own experience.
I love that, girl. You have blessed all of us today. I'm so grateful that we were able to make this happen. I just adore you. I love your content. It is so, listen, I share it every chance I get because it's life changing. It
Thank
really
you.
is. So
Thank
grateful for you. How can we get in touch with you to work
you.
with you?
Yes.
To find your
Yeah. So I am Yes God Wellness everywhere. I'm Yes God Wellness on Instagram. I am Yes God Wellness on Facebook, on YouTube. I am on TikTok as well. My handle over there is Everything is Perfect Life. Also, Meg the Millionaire with the Yes God Cast. I also have a podcast called the Yes God Cast. And yeah, Yes God Wellness. You can just look me up on pretty much all platforms, and you'll find all the major platforms rather, and I'll
Yeah.
pop up.
Well, thank you, girl. I appreciate you. And thank you again for being one of my day ones. I keep
Yes,
saying
God.
people who've been able to come on when I have like 5 followers. Yes, I appreciate you.
Yes, yes, God. Thank
And
you.
if this conversation touched you, please give us a follow, a like, a share. Of
Mhm.
course, go follow Megan and stay in touch and let me know what other content do you want to hear? What do you want to see? Whose voices are important to you? And I will do my best to bring more of that to you because the point of this is to be resonant as you shift and change in this season of your life. I love
Yes.
y'all and until next time.
Bye.